Hello, welcome back to Hellspawn Studios, or welcome if you're new. So I thought today I'd draw some concept art while rambling about the lore and world building of Rebuild. I know y'all don't like long intros, but before we start, I do have an announcement. I have Ko-fi! As you all know, I cannot monetize this channel, and I am very broke. You can send donations, pay for a monthly subscription, with perks, or you can commission me. Right now, the only commission options are basic character drawings, illustrations, and reference sheets, but I plan to eventually add listings for comic pages. There's no need to worry about having a PayPal account, since everything is through Stripe, you only need a bank account. The link for that is in the description. Alright, shameless self-promo done, now on to the lore. So, the Dark World. It wasn't super well defined in the original comic, but I managed to come up with something. The Dark World is sort of like Tir na Nog in Celtic mythology, or the Feywilds in D&D. That is to say, it's sort of its own plane of existence that's kind of parallel to and able to be accessed from our world. There are established gateways between the two worlds. For instance, the Bermuda Triangle is one big gateway, and there exists a pseudo-gateway consisting of a cemetery that is simultaneously hidden deep within the Okefenokee Swamp and in Shadewood, just past the northern border of the wilds. Gateways will always lead to geographical areas similar to themselves regardless of where they are. We don't see much of the Dark World as a whole, but we do see 4 major regions, 3 of which make up a very large enchanted forest. The Wilds, Slenderman's domain, the Frozen Wastes, Zalgo's domain, and Shadewood, which is fully ungoverned. All of these regions are on the windward side of a mountain range, the lower altitudes of which house a region called Seishin Sekai, which is the domain of an operator named Akuma. There are other regions, of course, such as a mermaid settlement off the eastern coast of the landmass this takes place on called Vathianera, but most of them are not particularly important to the plot. Each region is overseen by a powerful monster known as an operator. Operators are monsters meant to monitor and guard the gateways within their regions of the Dark World, as well as oversee the socio-political goings-on in said region. Operators can be granted this title by inheritance, appointment, or conquest, and said title comes with incredible power, both in a political and magical sense, and a lot of responsibility. An operator's region will be affected by their presence, thus changing its appearance based on their personality, the nature of their abilities, and their physical or mental state. The region we see the most of is the Wilds. It is part of the much larger magical forest, as I said earlier. The Wilds exist in a state of eternal autumn, maybe around mid-October. Many of the settlements within are very small, aside from the city of Embridge. There is no predominant species in terms of sapient monsters, but the Wilds are home to many magical and non-magical flora and fauna. Most notably, the Wilds happen to be the only place where that lantern roses, a type of bioluminescent flower, grow in the wild. There are 3 gateways leading to the human world. One inside an amethyst cave just bordering the mountains leading to Seishin Sekai, which leads to a similar cave in Uruguay, one inside a natural spring in the north that leads to the Bolton Strid in Yorkshire, and a third hidden in a very dense part of the forest near the center of the region that leads to a heavily forested island off the northeastern coast of Ireland. The house, a fairy mound that acts as Slenderman's home, is near the aforementioned natural spring, and just to its east is the city of Embridge, which functions as a trading hub between the Wilds and the Frozen Wastes by virtue of being close to the northeastern border. To the north, between the Wilds and the Frozen Wastes, is Shadewood, a part of the Dark World that, as I said before, is ungoverned. As a result, it is completely overgrown and in a perpetual state of summertime, around late June to early July. Almost nobody lives in Shadewood proper, and those who do are effectively hermits, and hardly ever interact with the people of the nearby regions. Shadewood is home to many of the same creatures and plants as the Wilds, along with a few others. One of Shadewood's defining features is this very species of bioluminescent mushrooms. This region, as a result of being overgrown, is very dark, with the main source of light being phoenix fire and the aforementioned bioluminescent mushrooms. It has 2 known gateways, one being Shadewood Cemetery, the other being a clearing near the center that leads to a spot deep in the Redwood National Park in California. Further to the north is the Frozen Wastes. It is the northernmost part of this larger magical forest and is in a perpetual state of winter. Not even a nice winter with heavy snow, more like a dry, unpleasant winter where everything is dead, there's frost on the ground but no snow, and the sky is always either white or slate gray from cloud cover. The majority of the sapient monster population resides in the Necropolis, a sprawling city that takes up much of the region, with small satellite settlements nearby. In the center of the necropolis lies what appears to be an old castle, beneath which lies a series of catacombs, often inaccurately called a crypt, which is home to Zalgo and his proxies. The primary demographic consists of demons, undead, and ice spirits, and the region has very little wildlife. The majority of their resources comes from trade between both the Wilds and Seishin Sekai, as the Frozen Wastes happen to be one of the very few locations where certain magical gemstones are mined. There is one known gateway within the Frozen Wastes, and it leads to an abandoned city in Pennsylvania. The last plot-important location is Seishin Sekai. It's not part of the nearby magical forest, but is instead spread across the lower altitudes of a mountain range just to the west. It is in a perpetual state of early spring, around late February to early March. It's basically an analog to Japan because I am a fucking weeaboo. The majority of the sapient monster population is, as you would probably guess, either yokai or human monsters. It's home to mostly magical creatures as opposed to mundane, such as the Momo-chan, which is spread to Shadewood and is based off of that creepy as hell bird statue that was circulating the internet for a while. Yes, I know that's based on an actual mythological creature. Don't at me. There is one known gateway near the lower altitudes of Seishin Seikai that leads to a wisteria tunnel near the Kamedo Tenjin Shrine in Tokyo. The region is overseen by the operator Akuma, whose palace is located further up the mountains from Seishin Seikai proper. The entirety of the Dark World has strong ambient magic, which has interesting effects on humans that cross over. For example, Hannah has a significantly extended lifespan and vampire-like traits despite being human, and Jeff is unnaturally strong for a human of his age and build, and both of these are the results of the Dark World's magic. This is actually part of why the Schmidts want to research it and its inhabitants. They have an interest in seeing how that magic can be utilized to benefit humanity. Speaking of magic, I tried to avoid having too structured a magic system because magic, not really a hard science. That said, I do have some things jotted down. Magic is a form of energy and can be manipulated like anything else. How that energy is manipulated, however, is dependent on the user. See, in-universe, the trick to casting spells is to associate an intended outcome with an action. However, some abilities come as naturally as breathing, especially for angels or demons who are made of magic. Certain forms of magic, like pyromancy or chloromancy, often need very little in the way of a focus. For example, Randy doesn't need a ritual to control plants, he can just hold his hands over where he wants to grow something, or point at where he wants his plants to go. Any action can be a magical focus, so for every magic user, the means of casting spells is different. For instance, for Lady it's specific hand movements, for Ben it's auditory, either music or his voice, and for Randy it's rituals and incantations. Undead typically possess magical abilities, and their specific abilities and focus will be dependent on their personality in life and who brought them back. However, all undead are capable of putting up a glamour to appear human at the cost of some of their strength until the glamour is dropped. The Dark World is, of course, inhabited entirely by monsters, but if I tried to go over monster biology in its entirety, we'd be here all day. I am, however, going to go over 5 specific kinds of monsters: data entities, proxies, human monsters, angels and demons, and artificial monsters. Data entities, affectionately nicknamed ghost viruses, are monsters made out of information, specifically code. No one is quite sure where they originated, but many people like to attribute their existence to the game Pony Island, an arcade game believed to trap human souls. They can temporarily turn incorporeal or invisible, just like typical ghosts, are hard to injure, and don't stay dead for very long. You can incapacitate one for long periods of time by overloading their system and causing them to blue screen, however. Dark Link, Herobrine, and Lost Silver are considered data entities, though Herobrine and Lost Silver also count as undead. Proxies are considered a subclass of monster, and any species can be a proxy. They are monsters who work for operators, and as such their souls have been marked by whatever operator has employed them. Once a monster becomes a proxy, their lifespan is directly linked to that of their operator, and for as long as their operator is alive, they cannot die by natural means. They can still be killed by trauma, but illness or age will not. Proxies can occasionally develop magical abilities that are basically a watered-down version of their operator's abilities. For example, both Tim and Hannah are capable of causing technological disruptions on a small scale and can teleport short distances. Human monsters, sometimes called corrupted humans, are a species of monster that, while lesser known, have existed since the dawn of humanity. They are most often created when a human forfeits their humanity by committing some despicable act, such as murder or torture. However, some are merely humans who spent too much time in the Dark World. For this reason, human monsters are often reviled by true monsters, or monsters who were born non-human, who believe that they make monsterkind look bad. As was stated earlier, human monsters often develop supernatural abilities after crossing over due to the Dark World's magic. I'm going to lump together angels and demons because they're actually the same species in universe. Demons are just a subspecies of angel. Angels and demons are unique in that their bodies are made of magic. They're sort of like hard light constructs. As a result, they can look like whatever they want, and the spells they cast are an extension of themselves. They are powerful creatures, as are any part human progeny. However, human angel and human demon hybrids are somewhat physically unstable. Since they're partially made of magic, their bodies mainly consist of biological failsafes that rely on their magic. If for some reason they are rendered unable to tap into it, be it through severe magical exhaustion or a soulbind, they become incredibly ill and in extreme cases can die. And then there are artificial monsters, which first appeared in the 16th century. These can be any number of things: sapient constructs, such as golems or homunculi, beings formed from strong emotions mixed with magic, such as tulpas or poltergeists, or a soul given an artificial body, such as an android. The SCP Foundation dabbled in creating their own artificial monsters using humans and genetic material from anomalies that had already been contained. For example, Sully is an alter separated from his body and put into an artificial body made by cloning the original, so to speak, and splicing the genetic material of said clone with that of a Sinanthrope, a shapeshifter that can turn into a dog, while Iris was a human whose genes were spliced with those of a dryad. Artificial monsters are often very resilient. Now, Dark World politics. This was tricky to figure out since I'm no good at figuring out the socio-political aspect of world building, but this is what I managed to figure out. On the continent this story takes place on, there are a grand total of 6 operators, though only 3 end up being important to the story. The other 3 are mentioned, but are not as narratively important. Slenderman, operator of the wilds; Ropster, operator of the frozen wastes and successor to Zalgo; Akuma, operator of Seishin Sekai; Mob and Titania, twin operators of the Dreamlands, which are higher up in the mountains past Seishin Sekai; and Hades, operator of a settlement in the Howling Desert, which is just past the mountains. Operators are often meant to work alongside each other, and prior to a certain incident well before Emma Masterman's time, around the 1800s, Slenderman, Zalgo, and Akuma oversaw the Enchanted Forest together. The incident in question involved a group of human monster hunters managing to find a way into the Dark World and killing Zalgo's original successor, who happened to be his daughter. Slenderman, Zalgo, and Akuma all had different ideas on how to deal with what was clearly meant to be a threat to them. Slenderman believed that the best option was to seal off the Dark World completely to prevent another attack. Akuma wanted to make an example of the humans who'd harmed the girl she'd helped raise, as a warning, and Zalgo was fully prepared to go scorched earth and annihilate humanity to avenge his fallen child. Nobody was happy with the other's suggested solutions, leading to civil war and a split between Slenderman and Zalgo's territories, which became the wilds and the frozen wastes respectively, while Akuma, fearing for the lives of her proxies, took them and fled into the mountains, where she founded Seishin Sekai. Relations got worse due to Emma Masterman entering the Dark World in the 80s and inadvertently getting the SCP Foundation involved, and it almost reignited the war between Slenderman and Zalgo, and tensions remained high after the death of Chikara, Zalgo's lieutenant at the time. This is about as much as I can spill about the lore without getting spoilery. There's not much else to talk about, so I'll end the video off here. Bye!